Say, for the sake of argument, that you're a self-described lefty activist and a big fan of causing needless arguments online, idly re-listening to some old breadtube classics on a lazy afternoon, when something in particular comes over the autoplay transom that piques your interest. It's a short video about how political debate is becoming more and more entwined with what we might call Chan culture, or typical anonymous image board uncouthness. That's already a pretty interesting topic, but what if, even better, the video also has a title that you're uniquely able to riff off of? That's exactly the position I was in when I caught The Card Says Moops from Ian Danskin's pretty solid Innuendo Studio series, The Alt-Right Playbook, on repeat recently. For anyone who hasn't seen it, I'll include a link to it at the top of the description. But basically, what that video does is dissect the reactionary right's tendency to argue online in bad faith. The title is taken from a comparison to an episode of Seinfeld that David Roberts also makes, in which one protagonist character argues insincerely about the answer to a trivia question with an arrogant and immunocompromised little boy in a hermetically sealed bubble.
Who invaded Spain in the 8th century?
That's a joke. The Moors.
Oh, no. I'm so sorry, it's the Moops. The correct answer is the Moops.
That's not Moops, you jerk. It's Moors. It's a misprint.
I'm sorry, the card says Moops.
The eponymous line does make complete sense in context. And here, to say Moops essentially means to argue underhandedly. The protagonist character in question knows they can only argue that they're right on a scant technicality, but it's certainly in their best interest to do so. In his video, Danskin points out that reactionaries and conservatives of all stripes will tolerate disagreement between themselves online for the sake of targeting leftists. They'll argue in nihilistically bad faith and will be inconsistent, because, to a reactionary mind, it's a point-scoring game where being correct doesn't have value, but sounding correct, shouting down the opposition, and triggering the libs does. As decent as this series is, Danskin doesn't really suggest an action item after pointing this out. I'm going to suggest that there's a real leftist case that we move our online rhetoric further in that direction too. The alt-right playbook knows that the online right uses the language and rhetoric of the left to attack progressive causes, while also hiding behind appeals to progressive empathy. Danskin knows this happens, but does he properly understand that the reverse would be an option too? I've already argued that if you're going to engage right-wingers online, the correct thing to do is to completely disabuse them of the notion that we're tolerant of them or their positions. We don't need to be even the slightest bit sincere either. How about the left uses the right's methods against them for once? Danskin's series acknowledges that only the most extreme ends of the political spectrum thrive in this so-called Chan culture, and that it's really easy to rile up and radicalize the average person over there. Well, all the views I hold and profess are labeled extremely far left, so surely there must be a way to leverage these radicalizing image board capabilities to the far left's benefit too. I go on these sorts of image boards all the time for all sorts of purposes, and I've been doing it for years. And I stay completely anonymous more than 90% of the time I'm there. There's nothing magical about them that makes them inherently reactionary. They might have a reputation as something of a far-right swamp nowadays, but by and large, that's just not true. The overwhelming majority of the user base of these places is open quote normal people. And even if it wasn't, that would be all the more reason to go and flood them with lefties looking for an argument. And if I am getting into something political with a rightist over there, I'll never betray my actual beliefs. Hell, you can even create bad faith strawman arguments just to attack by copy-pasting pre-written lines out of your go-to discourse Word document or whatever you have, and then literally get everyone in the thread on your side in some way by being behind both sides of an argument you started. Political discussion on an anonymous image board is actually very easy. On these sorts of sites, you're not trying to have a civil discussion or rationally find some middle ground. It's a game of misinformation, disinformation, baiting all the other commenters, and just name calling. It's not so much a winning of hearts and minds as it is occasionally getting yourself hyped up and desensitized to dealing with reactionaries like it always helps to be. Danskin points out that this is supposedly postmodern, and damn right they're going to call you that either way. And the right doesn't know what it means, and they couldn't define it for you if you gave them all day to do so. But if the entire online discourse is just going to be right-wingers complaining about postmodernism or whatever they think it is, we might as well just engage in a little creative interpretation of facts anyway. If you're going to cop the blame for something, you might as well do it after all. If they try to call me a liar, I'll lie. If they try to call me Jewish, I'll pilpul. If they try to call me out, I know it's working. If you're a lefty who, like me, enjoys arguing with these people online from time to time, argue in bad faith. We know we're correct, and even if it were realistically possible to win over any conservative minds by debating them on the internet, no committed leftist would have the responsibility to try it or put the effort in. Be it online or face to face, take a contradictory point with each new right-winger you come across if it helps you. Argue in blatant bad faith. Assume premises, change the topic, misrepresent what you actually think, and do it often. Do every little trick that tens of thousands of Chan dwellers do daily. Do what worms like Matt Walsh and Stephen Crowder or their buddies in electoral politics do when they debate. You don't owe these people honesty. You don't owe them sincerity. Dehumanize these people and just lie right to their faces. And if they call you out, remind them about a little idea they came up with, free speech in the marketplace of ideas. If you're arguing with one of these people, you should act like you don't believe anything except winning the argument. You won't get any points for taking the high road otherwise. Trust me. The ubiquity and commodification of digital communication has made being able to get people's attention, and even more, get a rise out of them, all the more valuable a resource. When you're arguing with people like this, especially online, there is no such thing as so underhanded an approach it's morally compromised. Argue by way of deception and have fun doing it. If you're dealing with some of the more optically minded rightists, make wedge issues out of the stuff you know they're not supposed to say out loud and push them on it. If they want to argue crime rates and the need for more police militarization, ask them something like why they're repeating the talking points of a you-know-what like Ben Shapiro.
The damn Mormons.
Or just tell them, actually, looting is based and white people should do it more. If they want to argue about the erosion of the Western manufacturing industry, ask them what they think about current birth rates and remind them that we'd have a much bigger labor force if we just opened the borders. For almost a decade now, impressionable teenagers and young adults using reactionary arguments to just open quote, trigger the libs or have a bit of fun trolling or whatever, by repeating something you saw a fascist type out on an image board was completely normal online. And I think it's about high time we start to normalize baiting the right like that instead. By the end of his video, Danskin correctly points out that we have very few actual nihilists here on the left. Perhaps that's just an unavoidable symptom of the big difference behind what drives left and right politics. But very few of us on the left, and too few of us, I'd say, are willing to look reactionaries square in the eyes and say moops. If everyone on our side agrees that the right is a problem, why not do the most we could do in rectifying it? Lie to them, straw man their arguments, rile them up for as long as you want, then just call them an incel or something and dip out of the conversation without bothering to hear their response. Play games with the sickly little bubble boys of the world, and when it comes time to check facts and balance scores, tell them that you're afraid the correct answer was Moops. Of course, keeping that in mind, and even with all this bluster over discourse and theory, relatively very little meaningful leftist organizing happens, or ought to happen, on the internet. But inasmuch as you will inevitably encounter hardline conservative trolls online regardless, your online identity, so to speak, as a leftist, isn't the part of your social engagement that's doing the heavy lifting. So the internet might as well just be a playground built around pissing those people off, as Danskin puts it. Danskin and his videos mean well, of course, and we'd agree on most everything else of any real consequence politically, no doubt. But his take on dealing with bad faith reactionaries lacks a critical understanding of what really motivates these people, and his instincts for countering them lack teeth. Anyway, that's just my 2 cents on the matter. I hope you took something worthwhile from hearing all that, and until next time, goodbye and have a lovely day. This has been Card Posting. My name's Card, and I say Moops.